Okay, good morning. I'm Tommy Spalding, and it is May 17th, and we're in for a great morning. I want to welcome you to the Florida Club Managers Association Heart-Led Leader webinar series that we've been doing thanks to Beth Sargent and Sherry and the board of FLCMAA over the last 2 years, bringing in thought leaders all over the world to teach our club leaders in Florida. It's now May, and we're wrapping up a brutal, incredible season, and it's time to retool and to start thinking about next year and how we can get better. One of the things that, if you ask my wife Jill, that she loves most about me, besides my gray hair, she would say that my husband is always striving to become a better husband and a better father and a better leader, always reading books, always getting coached. He's starving to learn. And I think that great leaders do is that they're always hungry to learn. And now that the season is over, we look at June, July, and August to really rest and retool and to learn and to grow. It's my honor to introduce my friend Randy Gravitt. And I was reading his bio, and I was really thinking a lot about introductions. And I wanted to share a little story about introductions. I think in the past, we introduced speakers and authors to give credentials so you could understand what they're talking about. But yesterday, I was in Tucson, Arizona, speaking to a couple hundred medical doctors at a hospital. And the CEO of the hospital was introducing me yesterday afternoon, where I went to college, how many kids I have, and, just blah, 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 blah. And no one was listening. I mean, it was like people were on their cell phones, their pagers. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be awful. And then she says, oh, Tommy Spalding's written 3 #1 best-selling, New York Times best-selling books. And all of a sudden, everyone just, perked up. Like it was like the credibility that they needed to hear for them to shut up and put their phones down and listen. And I actually think that's what introductions are really all about, is not, the credentials of who I'm introducing, but why you should listen. And when I read Randy's, bio, yes, he's an author and he's a father and he's a husband and he's a coach and he's been doing this leadership business for years. But the 2 things that I really want to share by why we should listen to this guy is, one is I've been in the business for 25 years and I've met thousands of thought leaders, and I put them all in 2 buckets. And I've shared this before: those that are full of themselves and those that are full of others. And unfortunately, about 95% of all the thought leaders out there are full of themselves. And very, very rare people are truly full of others to serve others. And Randy is absolutely a part of that category. He attended one of my leadership retreats this summer, and I just fell in love with his heart. So you're going to hear from an authentic, genuine human being. But the number 2 reason why you should listen is Chick-fil-A is a company. I'm wearing the Chick-fil-A t-shirt just to support Randy. Randy does not work for Chick-fil-A. Randy has his own leadership business. He's written 2 books, Finding Your Way and Unstuck. He's got a coaching company called Integrate, where he coaches, high performance leaders. But he's been working with Chick-fil-A for years. But here's why you should listen. Chick-fil-A, in my opinion, is one of the top companies in the world. And they don't really hire a lot of leadership speakers because they have a lot of their own internal leadership speakers, and they create all their leadership content. They've written 20, 30 books and training manuals. And that's why they have this incredible customer service, because they write their own stuff and they teach their own stuff. There's only one human being on the planet that's allowed, that's not a Chick-fil-A employee, to teach the Chick-fil-A material. And that's Randy Gravitt. So that's just enough credibility right there to say this guy is the real deal. We have a lot to learn from him. Randy, thank you for joining us and being part of our Heart Leader webinar. We're going to do Q&A. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat. Randy's going to talk about 50 minutes and we'll do 10 minutes of Q&A. Thanks, Randy, for being with us.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be with you guys, pumped up here. I'm definitely not full of myself. I'm not impressed with myself at all. I'm just a normal guy, but I'm really excited to get to hang out with you guys. I know the world is just a different place than it was a few years ago. And when we wrote this book, Unstuck, it was before COVID. There was still a time there where people were, I think, overwhelmed. There was a lot of, Mark Miller and I call it the quicksand that we get into as leaders. And so it's, I think it's a topic we could talk about today for a few minutes. So I'm excited to hang out with you. I did talk to my mom. I'm in Charlotte, actually. I'm traveling, and talked to my mom yesterday on the way to the airport. My mom's 83 now, and she asked me what I'd go in, and I was telling her that I was going to be meeting with you guys. And she said, well, you're going to do a really good job. So I think you guys are in for a treat. It's at least my mom said so. So this should be a great time together. I want us to start with a question, and I love to calibrate when I begin a time with a group of people. And I think this question maybe is about as good a question as there is. It's this question: where are you? And now I'm going to, full disclosure here, I'm stealing this question. This is, and I probably shouldn't even admit that. This is not my question. This question is as old as time. In fact, I think it's the second question that was ever asked in the history of the world. This is a question, and when I say I shouldn't steal it, it's because I'm stealing it from God, actually. I don't know if you are a person of faith or not. I actually like to read the Bible, and there's a story in the beginning. Even if you don't read the Bible, you've heard of Adam and Eve. They're the first man and woman. They've eaten the forbidden fruit. They're in trouble. It's one of those, everybody out of the pool. You guys in Florida can relate to people get in trouble. You got to sit on the side, and that's really what's happened here. And then God asked this question. Now, my wife and I, Laura, we have 4 daughters. Don't feel sorry for us. They're all grown now and off the payroll, thankfully, which is cool. But there were a couple of times through the years we lost our couple of our kids. I thought you were watching her. No, I thought you had her. Where'd she go? And then we would find them. There were a couple of our kids we tried to lose through the years. We never were able to. They kept coming back. Now they're all gone, and they're bringing back little grandbabies, which is fun. If there really is a God, he's not lost Adam and Eve. He knows exactly where they are. And yet he's asking this question: where are you? And I think I really borrowed this from some of my buddies who are former addicts. They told me, if you're going to get better, you have to admit where you are. You have to admit you have a problem. And I think that's what's going on in the Garden of Eden. There's this question of, like, where are you? And so as you think about your reality today, I want you to ask yourself this question, like, where am I? Now, I'm guessing coming off of Mother's Day weekend, there's got to be a little bit of fatigue going on with you guys. It's, a lot of challenge over the last few months. Spring break is over. Maybe some of you are glad about that. And the summer season's here, and then you'll ramp back up and be ready to go in the fall. As you think about yourself today, where are you? And as I travel, if I go into an airport, or if I'm ever in a shopping mall, I try to avoid shopping malls at this point. If I ever go into one, I'm always looking for the kiosk that has the sign. It's got all the stores that are available. And there's always a little star every time I find one of those maps, and it has the same 3 words: you are here. It's just this reminder that this is where you start. The Foot Locker is available down there. Dillard's or Macy's is available that way. You get to decide which way you go, but you have to start right here. And so today, as we calibrate, I want to ask you, where are you? What is your current reality? And I'm guessing some of you are in a place where you're feeling a little bit fatigued. Maybe you're feeling drained. Some of you might be exhausted. You're having a hard time finding people, the right people. You've got some people you wish you didn't have. There's all kinds of places we find ourselves. And if we're not careful, our leadership can become very much like this picture I want to show you. It just feels like this constant slog through the muck and the mire. Now, there's some things I love about this picture. It does represent the way we feel sometimes, but I also love the fact that this woman in this bog here is still moving, and she's still making progress. She hasn't given up. I think there's some beauty in that picture. And I love leaders that have the heart. Tommy talks about being a heart-led leader. At some point, you get to this place where you realize, when things aren't good around me, I still can make things good. There's still some things I can do. I can continue to take steps toward where I want to be. So as we calibrate today, where are you? What is your current reality? Now, I grew up in a little small town in North Georgia. I don't know how much mudding you do in Florida with 4-wheel drives, but we would go mudding with our friends, and from time to time you get in a place and you end up stuck. I mean, you end up in a place where you just can't move. My granddad taught me when I was a kid that if you get stuck, there's really one thing you need, and only one thing you need. And I'm thinking, what is that? You need a buddy who has a chain on his truck that can pull you out. I mean, that helps. You need, like, what do you need, Grandpa? And he says, you need this important word right here. You need traction. Now, if your buddy does have a chain, that creates great traction quick, and it'll begin to pull you out. But where I'm from, we were looking for boards and sticks and rocks and anything you can get, and you want to put it into the place where the vehicle is stuck, so you can create that traction. Think about this for a second. If you've ever been stuck in a vehicle, really the dumbest thing in the world you can do is push the accelerator harder. I mean, all that really does is just bury you deeper. And I think sometimes we get to this point where we're struggling. We know things are hard. We might feel exhausted today. And yet you wake up and you just go, I'm just going to try harder. I'm going to work longer. I'm going to do more. And honestly, in some ways, that just begins to sling mud on all the people around us. Trying harder is not the answer. Usually when we lack traction, we do have to have this place where we come back and we find traction. Now, as we think about this concept of traction, you may be in a different season of your life than you were when you first, obviously you're in a different place than you were when you started out. Maybe some of you been doing what you're doing for a while. I remember my dad, he worked with a utility company, was with Georgia Power, and he did that for 35 years. And when I asked him this question, I said, Dad, well, how did you, he was working in a carpet mill before that. He was making rugs, and he had an opportunity to leave there back in 1960. And he told me he was making $1.04 an hour to work on these rugs. And he got a call from Georgia Power, and he had an opportunity to go and work as a helper in the line crew. I said, what does a helper in the line crew do? And he says, anything the line crew doesn't want to do, that's what the helper does. It's just, you show up. And he said he was literally taking post hole diggers, and he would dig holes. There was no augers or anything. They're digging holes to put power poles into these holes. And he said, that's what I did. That's how I started my career. And he said, I was so excited. They told me they're going to pay me $1.67 an hour. And I was making $1.04. And he said, I thought I'd hit the lottery. He said, it was just crazy. I was working hard, but I was loving it on the front side of my career. There was this excitement going on when I started out. And you can relate to that. When you started in what you're doing, I'm guessing you were all excited. It's almost like if we get in a new relationship, we're excited about that. If you get a new job, you start a new program or a career, a path in a college back in the day, if you went to college, or if you started school. I remember the first day of school as a little kid was always pretty exciting. All the days after that, it seemed like they weren't nearly as exciting. It kind of went downhill after the first day. We love beginnings. I mean, we love it. I mean, there's this excitement phase that goes on, and we love endings. I mean, I remember I went to my dad's retirement party at the end of his career. He'd been there 35 years and really had built a legacy with his team and his people and all their hearts. Again, Tommy, you love this. There's just a lot of heart stuff going on. There's stories that they were telling, and they had a really cool party. One of these parties where they had punch with foam on top. It's a big bowl and little lemon cookies, and everybody's having a great time. It's just after work one day, they all gathered together, and there were tears and laughter. And I looked at that and I thought, man, there's excitement at the beginning. My dad told me, and there was excitement at the end. He was like, finally had found freedom. But as I look at my dad's career and I look back over the successful leaders that I get to hang out with, or I look at them and start paying attention, it's the leaders that are able to find traction on those mundane days in the middle of their career that they're the ones that create legacy. They're the ones that are able to build a community and a family and all the great things. When you look at their lives, there's just something about them. They keep showing up every day and living with traction that makes this a powerful thing. So I want us to today, as we think about this concept, I want to give you a little formula. I mean, it's great if you have a buddy that can encourage you and pull you out of the ditch if you feel like you're stuck right now. But there's some things you actually can do to help you with this. And so we call it our traction formula. And I'd like to take a few minutes and just share this with you. This is from our book, Unstuck. When we wrote this book, I was at a place where I had been doing the same thing for about 18 years. I felt like I'm just kind of going through the motions, and I got to a point where, you know, I mean, at some point, you know, all the answers to the test, right? You know who's going to complain, and you know who's going to be grateful, and you know how to do your job. You get confident in that. You're able to contribute at a high level. But if we're not careful, we get to this place in our lives where we can really hit a stop sign. And when you hit the stop sign, that was our language for becoming stuck. If you're not careful, you can become bored, tired, disillusioned. You thought this was going to be the perfect job forever, and then you realize the gig's up. I mean, this has gotten really hard, and it's always hard. I mean, there's hard, but there's two kinds of hard. There's doable hard, which that's what the job should be, and then there's destructive hard. And if we get to that stop sign and we don't know how to deal with it, we can get to a place where it can become destructive hard. We check out emotionally, we disengage. And if we as leaders are not engaged, it's going to be really hard for our team around us to be engaged. People always watch the leader, and our voice is loud. The leader's voice is the loudest voice, but our actions are always louder than our voice. And if we're having a hard time staying locked in, and the vision becomes fuzzy to us, it'll get blurry to the people who are following us real quickly. And so we can't stay there at that stop sign. It's just, now we got a couple of options. We can try to medicate it. I mean, we can binge watch Netflix, or we can start drinking, or get to the middle of your life and you can go, I'm gonna try to drown my sorrows, so to speak. People become addicted to all kinds of stuff. I mean, just destructive behavior. We have a chance to try to escape, and I'm not sure that always works. In fact, as I look at people, most of them that try that, it doesn't really work out for them. There's an old author, a guy named Henry Nouwen. He says the courageous leader is not the leader who blazes a trail into the future. The courageous leader is actually the one that blazes a trail into his or her own heart. And I love this heart-led leader thing. I love this idea that if we pay attention to our heart, we don't have to go down the bad habit road. Let's get a little red sports car and blow up our family. Those are options, but that's not the best option. The best option is to actually realize that inside our hearts there is an opportunity for us to do some work. And if we get this right, if we can get back to a place of traction, a place of, we'll call it renewal here, it's really amazing what happens to the people around us. They begin to benefit. When you have a leader who's locked in and leading from his or her heart, rather than just checked out and disengaged, it's so much better for us when we have the right leader. So let's think about this traction formula. Let's start with the first piece of the formula. It's called introspection. Now, you guys understand inspection. You make properties look amazing. All kinds of stuff you've got going on. It's got to be inspected. Some of you are in food. The Chick-fil-A talks about all the time food safety. We don't want to be on CNN because we had a problem with something going wrong with our food. We want to make sure that we are inspecting. Everybody talks about government regulations, all kind of inspection at this point. But who's talking about introspection? Introspection is when we pay attention and we look at what's going on, or we inspect on the inside. We inspect on the inside. Now, I'm actually staying I'm in Charlotte right now. I'm headed back to Atlanta today, and I was in a hotel room, and I did an event this morning. I just came back to my room and I stayed, and this hotel's pretty nice. A hotel is nice when you pull up. Sometimes you think it's nice because they have valet parking, or they have chandeliers in the lobby, or lots of places to check in. You don't have to wait in line. Those are all indicators. But how do you know a place is really nice? It's when you come into the room and you have 2 mirrors in the bathroom. So if you have 2 mirrors in the bathroom, that's a really nice hotel. All the hotels have 1 mirror in the bathroom. That's the big one where you brush your teeth. But this one that I'm staying in here has this other little mirror right here. I'm gonna hold it up. I don't know if you can see this. I'm gonna try to. This mirror right here. I'm not gonna look in this mirror because I'm convinced no human being should look in these mirrors. These are called makeup mirrors. My daughters explained to me, Dad, that's a makeup mirror. And on one side of the mirror, it has 5 times the power of the big mirror on the wall. And on the other side, on a really nice makeup mirror, they explained to me it's got 10x power. So today, as you think about your leadership, you think about your life, I want you to take not just a flyby, how are you doing today? Because it'd be easy to say, I'm fine, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm a little tired from the weekend, but how are you really doing? Like at a makeup mirror level, as you look at your own heart today, you inspect on the inside, how are you doing? And I'll give you a couple of questions to think about. I'll give you a couple of things here. Let's ask ourselves this question. What's it like to be led by you? And what's it like to be loved by you? What's it like to be led by you? And what's it like to be loved by you? The people on your team, they're going to benefit, as I said a moment ago, greatly if your heart is locked in and you're at a place of traction. And you know this, you've had leaders before, they weren't locked in. You may have a leader now that is not locked in. Chances are that's caused you a lot of grief in the past if you've had a leader that really wasn't doing what they were supposed to do. They weren't living with traction. And then let's talk about outside of work as well. I think this is something I'm really passionate about. What's it like, not just from 9 to 5, but what's going on from 5 to 9? What is it like to be in your family? What's it like when you think about the way you're taking care of yourself? What's it like when you think about the way you're handling your own financial stuff, your own emotions, your own mental health? I mean, there's studies out now that 1 out of 3 people are struggling with mental health and anxiety and stress. And I'm not sure it's clinical. I mean, I can't help you. I mean, I'm not a doctor, and there are some people who need a doctor, but I also know there are some people right now who are struggling at a level, and it's really the circumstances. And I say that again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert on this, but I know the numbers were 8% pre-COVID, and now it's at 32%. And so I don't think there's 4 times as many people that have like broken stuff that need medical help. But I do think that circumstances have gotten so hard that if we're not careful, we will forfeit our emotions over to our circumstances. And now we're battling our circumstances, which a lot of times we can't control. We can't control when somebody at the club is a jerk. We can't control if we get a diagnosis. I mean, there's things we can't control. But there are things we can control. Our attitude and our emotions and our heart, those are things that we can work on, and we can really we can have agency there. We have choice. And if we get that right, we now have our emotions intact that can help us battle our circumstances. But when I have bad circumstances that I'm in this fist fight with, you've been in a fist fight lately, probably not, but it can feel like this exhausting wrestling match with my circumstances every day. Well, if I'm wrestling my circumstances and my emotions, I've forfeited over here, it can be exhausting to be at a place where we're stuck. And so this idea of introspection is huge for us to make sure that we're inspecting what's going on at a makeup mirror level. What's it like to be led by you and loved by you? Again, 9 to 5 is important, but most of us would say 5 to 9 is maybe even more important. I always tell leaders, I think if you win at work and you lose at home, I'm pretty sure you still lose. I don't think the goal is to build a great club and to blow up your family. And so there's this struggle here for us to get this right and understand this and to inspect on the inside. So here you might even, as you look at this picture, you might even ask yourself, how much time lately have you been spending evaluating what's going on? It's easy for me when I start thinking about what's going on to complain or to criticize or to tell somebody else, but to really calibrate on where am I? Remember our question, where are you? And what am I going to do to get from where I am to where I want to go? We'll talk about that in a second, but I love this picture here. I've got a friend of mine who's a former fighter pilot in the Navy, Top Gun kind of guy. And we spent some time coaching him the last couple of years, which is cool. He's got a great business, and I've loved hanging out with him. But one of the things he actually taught me was we were having a conversation, and you guys in Florida will get this. I wasn't sure what the answer was when he asked me. He said, when you stand on the beach, how far do you think you can see? And I'm like, I don't know. You can see to China. I mean, what's the answer? You look across the water, it looks like you can see a long way. If it's clear day, he said, no, you can see 2.9 miles. I'm like, no, you can see further than 2. I mean, can't you see further? I mean, 2.9, what are you talking about? He said, actually, you've heard the concept that the earth is round, right? It's curved. And I'm like, I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. I'm from a small town, but the earth is round, made it up there. And he said 2.9 miles. He said the earth is curved and there's actually a horizon and it begins to curve off. And if you're standing at sea level, you can see 2.9 miles. He said, I did the math. Now, he's a former fighter pilot. I don't know what that means about math, but I took his word for it because I'm thinking he probably knows more math than I do. And here's what he said that just blew me away. He said, if you go to 1,000 feet, like even if you get on your balcony on the 6th floor, it's 75 feet. You can start to see further. But he said, if you go to 1,000 feet up, you pull up, you can see 39 miles. I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. He said, if you got a telescope, whatever, and you go to 30,000 feet, you actually, the math says you can see 211 miles until it'll begin to, horizon off again. And I'm guessing if you're like most of the leaders I'm hanging out with, there's this tendency to grind away on the beach day after day, shift after shift. And if we're not careful, we can just live and lead at sea level, and it can be overwhelming. It does become destructive hard to lead a team if we're not pulled up at any point thinking about where are we trying to take people and what are we trying to accomplish and why does it matter? And so I want to encourage you, when you think about introspection and asking yourself how you're doing, I want to remind you that you're going to need some time to pull up and lead at a higher level, to think at a higher level, to ask yourself where you're going and again, what you're trying to accomplish. If we're not, we're going to confuse activity with accomplishment. And there's nothing wrong with being busy, and you can be busy without being hurried. But if we don't have this understanding that we've got to pull up and spend some time thinking and calibrating and assessing where we are, we're going to have a really hard time to go to another place. Here's what I can tell you: as you think about your schedule right now, noise, let's think about noise here for a second. Noise is making it onto your calendar. It's making it onto your schedule, whether you schedule it or not. You've got all kind of noise going on. The members are making noise. Your workers are making noise. Your spouse may be making noise. Your kids are making noise. The media is making noise. Social media noise. You have noise in your own head noise. There's noise in the system. It's on your schedule, whether you schedule it or not. But quiet will not make it on your schedule unless you schedule it. And the best leaders I know, they have some time where they spend in quiet. They think about like what they're trying to do, why it matters, and they're able to have this rhythm in their life of busyness. Yes, they're in the work, but they also pull up from time to time and say, where are we trying to go? And they calibrate like at that you are here place and going, okay, here's where we are, but we don't have to stay. Let's start here, but you don't have to stay there. And so I love this idea of introspection. As we think about this, how much time right now have you been putting on your calendar to lead yourself? I think the hardest person you're going to lead is you. If you can lead you, you're going to have a really great chance to impact the people around you. But your schedule is not going to lie to you. It's going to tell you the truth about that. My friend Mark Miller, who works for Chick-fil-A, Mark and I've created a lot of content and stuff together for those guys. He always says, he told me recently, he said, I think the higher up you go in an organization, the more time you need to spend alone. Now, you don't need to be lonely. Mark's like, I'm not advocating for lonely. People say all the time it's lonely at the top. Loneliness is a choice. It's when you live in isolation. Sometimes we hit the stop sign. We like to become isolated and we find ourselves lonely. We don't have to do that. You should live in community. You should have a team. You should have people around you, your family. But we got to spend some time alone, introspecting, thinking about where we are. So I'm going to throw up a couple of questions here. And I would encourage you in the chat just to begin to maybe answer these. I'd love for everybody to just put in the chat your one-word reality. If you had to pick one word that describes your current reality at work, what would that word be? Just put work and then dash and then put that word. And then at home, what is your one-word reality at home right now? Maybe it's a positive word. Maybe it's a great word. Maybe you're hopeful when you got joy and there's all. But chances are there's maybe one of these places or maybe both. You're going, I'm feeling a little stuck right now. I'm feeling, frustrated or overwhelmed, whatever. Let's just share in the chat what we're feeling there as we think about this. And you might even take this one word checkup back to the people on your team, maybe even the people in your family. It's a great little way to just start a conversation and to get on the same page where we're able to hear what others are going through. And then the important thing at a heart level would be to show empathy at that point. Empathy. I hear people talk about empathy all the time. I've talked about it. I've heard it for years. And I thought, I need to look that up. I want to make sure I know exactly what empathy means. I mean, I think I know what it means, but I want to make sure. And I looked it up, and the literal definition is to understand and share in the feelings of another. And so it's so important for me to know, like, what are my people feeling? What are they going through? I can't understand and share in that feeling if I don't know what that feeling is. But if I'm not careful, I'll hear, let's say Tommy's going through something hard, and I'm hearing that, I understand that, but I'm not necessarily sharing it in it if I'm thinking, man, I'm glad that's Tommy and not me. If I'm really sharing in that, I'm actually, if Tommy's going through it, there's a piece of me that's going through it as well. And I think there's something there when we introspect, we look on the inside, we ask ourselves, do I really care about the people around me? I think that's one of the things that makes us a leader that others want to follow. It's really hard to demonstrate care to others. We say it all the time, let's add value, let's demonstrate care. But it's hard to demonstrate care if I don't care. So maybe I've got to do a little bit of calibration there on my own heart. So what one word best describes your current reality at work and one at home? All right, so we got the first piece of the traction formula is what we would call introspection. Number two is redirection. So if I realize that I'm not heading in the direction I want to, let's say I'm going to drive across the country, and I'm starting here in Charlotte, and I'm gonna head west, and I look at the signs and I realize I'm on the freeway going to the east. I'm not going the direction I need to. It's not enough for me to slow down. Some of you right now, as you think about your life and you begin to introspect, like things are not going the way they need to be at home, or they're not where they need to be at work. It's not enough to realize that and take your foot off the gas. In fact, that's a lot of times that's what we do. We know we're not doing what we're supposed to do, but rather than turning around, we actually just take our foot off the gas. We just go, I'm just going to disengage. I'm not going to go as fast. I'm still going the wrong way, but I'm not going to go as fast, or I'm actually slowing down. I'm not even accelerating anymore. That's disengagement. There's this moment where we have to realize we're not headed where we need to go. And we've got to take some time and redirect and say, okay, let's set the GPS here, and let's make sure that, the car is great because it tells us, like, you need to turn around right here. What would it look like for your life for you to take some time, go back even to that time when you're spending alone, and maybe you just build in the discipline every day to spend 15 minutes and just think, like, what do I want to accomplish today? Who do I want to add value to today? Who do I want to help today? I think there's nothing better when it comes to a leader, nothing better than being a servant leader. I love the leaders who show up and think like an offensive lineman. So I don't know if any of you like football or not, but let's think about an offensive lineman here for a second. They don't ever get their name in the paper. It's not even football season. All I've been here, I mean, the NBA playoffs are going on, the NHL playoffs are going on, and all I hear about every day is the NFL and NFL quarterbacks specifically. They keep talking about what Aaron Rodgers is doing and what Patrick Mahomes is doing. All these quarterbacks are shuffling. It's all you ever hear about. And yet these quarterbacks would not be making the hundreds of millions of dollars that they're making if it weren't for people who called offensive linemen who wake up in the morning and they show up at a facility and they tape up and they open up holes so other people can score. That's what they do. As a manager, that's a little bit of what you do, right? I mean, you've got all these people and you're creating a winning environment for them. And the truth is, we know this, they don't appreciate it all the time. A lot of people don't say thank you. They're not gonna be grateful. I mean, it's not even saying thank you. There's this lack of gratitude, and it can make it really hard when we are not understanding why we're doing what we're doing. It's so important for us to have this offensive lineman mindset, and the people on your team are the same way. If you will open up ways for the people on your team to win, for me, that's how I feel like I'm winning. If I'm helping the people around me win, I will feel like I've had a really great day. That's a good way to think about your life. In fact, I would encourage you as you lie down tonight and every night to ask yourself, did I help somebody win today? And I think if you help somebody win every day, it might be your son who's struggling, and you're going, I've been trying to fix my son and help my son, and I've been saying it louder, and saying it louder doesn't make me more right. I always tell people, you're never persuasive when you're abrasive. You've been saying it in a harsh way to your employees. That's not working. But what would happen if I just flipped my mindset and thought, How can I help all the people around my life win today? How can I add value to them? I think when you add value, you will become a lot more valuable. But the heart-led leader is one who doesn't add value so they'll be more valuable. They add value because they value people. And so when you start showing up every day, I love these offensive linemen who just do their job. They do what they're supposed to do, and the people around them flourish because of that. And if you ask me, again, nobody's asking me, but I'm just going to say that's how legacies are built. It's my dad when people were complaining in the middle of his career, when people were, there's an electrical storm on the mountain and all the electricity's out. He's out in the middle of the night in a thankless world, doing what he's supposed to do and with his team, and they're there shoulder to shoulder. There's something great about that. And he got to celebrate down the road. You may be still in the middle of your career and the lemon cookies are a long way off, but I want to encourage you to not lose heart in doing the right thing. There's valor in that, and there's value in that, and you should feel great about that. If you're in a place where you realize you're not heading in the direction you need to, we got to redirect. It's just huge. So, do you need a change in direction? Is there a place in your life right now where you would say, I actually am going to have to get on a different road? I told my kids when they're growing up, the longer you stay on the wrong road, the further you get from where you want to be. And if your heart's going down this road where it's not locked in on what it needs to be, it's not enough to take your foot off the gas. We need leaders who are going to redirect and turn it back in the right direction. Well, it's not enough. It's not enough to introspect and know I'm not where I need to be. And it's not enough to even turn the car around. At some point, you got to put your foot on the gas and you got to take some action in the right direction. And so I want to challenge you today to begin to spend some time introspecting, like, what would it look like for me to pull up? You don't have to live at 30,000 feet every day, but at some point you need to think 30,000 feet, like, where are we going this year? And probably every month you need to pull up to 1,000 feet. You're going to live on the beach at times, and you're going to push through the grind. I think if leaders can at least get on the 6th floor, up on the balcony kind of mindset, the people around you, it's not that you're not going to help them and be shoulder to shoulder, but if you're cleaning and doing and cooking and all this stuff with the people around you, and all you're doing is just cooking and cleaning and doing, and you're not teaching and coaching and challenging and inspiring and some of those things that leaders do, you're good enough to be doing and wearing the leader hat at the same time. Let's not take that off, but let's live a little bit above the fray in that introspection thing. And then if there's some places today you need to redirect, I encourage you to do that. But once you redirect, once you decide that, it's not enough just to come to the session. Like, what are you going to go and do? This action piece is huge for us to initiate change in our lives. And I like this picture because it's just, this guy's just taking a step on his hike. It's not like there's a mountain he's trying to go up, but it just starts with a baby step. When I was a kid, I learned this game from my mom. It was called Mother May I, and you may have heard of this game. It's actually the dumbest game in the history of the world. The game was totally rigged. I have a little brother and a little sister, and my mother would sit on the steps, and we would be on the other end of the sidewalk. And now as I gotten older, I'm realizing my mom just wanted to be as far away from us probably as she could be for a few minutes, as we're driving her crazy. But she said, we're gonna play this game, and she's got a piece of candy in her hand, and she says, we're gonna play Mother May I. And basically each one of you go one at a time, and you have to ask permission. Can I take a step? The reason I say it's rigged is my mom got to totally decide, like, no, you may not. I mean, I got long legs. I'm like, may I take a giant step? She's like, no, you may not. And my brother's like, can I take a medium step? And she's like, no, you may not. And my sister, can I take a baby step? That was one of your options. And my mom is like, yes, you may. And my sister is just baby stepping her way to the candy. And I'm like, this game is totally rigged. This was not, she's trying to help out the little ones here. Well, the reality is, for you, the game is actually not rigged. It feels like it's rigged sometimes. It feels like nobody appreciates. It feels like nobody's grateful. It feels like I'm just doomed to be stuck forever. But if we would just take a baby step, if we just take one step toward where we want to be, we actually get closer to high performance every time we take a step. How do I know? Because your direction always determines your destination. Every time you take a step, you're getting closer to where you want to be. And I think this is a huge opportunity for us today to just say, let me identify one place. Let me identify one idea. Let me identify one opportunity and just take a baby step. And I would even activate it this way by saying, what do you need to do today before the day's over? Maybe you need to schedule a meeting with yourself, some quiet on your calendar to say, okay, when is that going to be? And that quiet is going to be easy to get in your quiet, moment and think that's when I check my email or when I'll scroll and look at my text. No, this is quiet for you to just say, okay, I'm going to get a pad and a pen and I'm going to look out the window like the guy a minute ago. I'm just going to go, where are we going and why does it matter and who needs help? And give yourself a way to strategize here for a second with what you're trying to do, rather than just being, busy all the time. It's not a time to catch up. It's an active opportunity for you to calibrate and to move forward. Maybe that's your step today. When you think about the baby step you need to take, maybe there's a person you need to meet with on your team that you've been struggling, or maybe there's a person you need to add to your team. I don't know what it is, but I would encourage you today to not just introspect and things are hard and things are stuck and let's redirect, but we're going to have to put our foot on the gas. And then all of a sudden we can get to a place of renewal. And here's what I've noticed. This actually happened to me. I'll share at the end, but this happened to me is when you get to that place of traction, the wind comes back in your sail and joy comes back actually when you do that. So my question, I guess, here would be, what action do you need to take to create change? I mean, I think it's great that you showed up for an hour here on the call and that we spent this time together, but we really don't get a lot of credit I guess we stayed out of trouble for the last hour, but other than that, we don't get a lot of credit if we don't do anything with what we're talking about here. So what change do you need to make as we go forward? So here's what I want to do as we wrap up. I want to give you a chance to I think Tommy said we'll take some questions. Before I take the questions, I want to give you a way to stay connected. So there's a book we wrote called unSTUCK. It's a parable about a guy who's sort of in the middle of his career, and in the back of that, that parable is 125 pages or so, and then there's a 50-60 page journal in the back that'll help you work through that process. And I would encourage you to get a copy of that book. You can get it at Amazon or through Barnes & Noble, wherever. It's a great little resource. I also want to give you something today. If you'll text the word unSTUCK to that number there, 33777, I've written a little 20-page, basically, blueprint to help you build the life that you want. And there are these 5 C's they all start with C, of self-leadership. Love to give you a copy of that. Hopefully that would be something that would help you and the leaders around you. You can text unSTUCK to that number, and love to give all of you a copy of that. I think it might be something that if you're going to spend, an hour of quiet, you might even take that resource and let that be something that would help you create that blueprint that you're on this march to high performance. It's not, leaders that last aren't built fast. They're built over time. And so we just, every day we keep working on our own personal growth. And then we've got a bunch of resources at leadeveryday.com. And I without hesitation tell you to buy as much as you want. If there's any profits at all, we give all that away to charity. So buy all you want. You'll help us change the world. And then I do a little podcast every day called Chasing Greatness to try to help leaders win at home and win at work and ultimately win in life. And so that'd be something. It's 6 or 7 minutes, pretty simple. That might be something that will be helpful. So I'm grateful I got to spend time with you. I've got one last little thing I'll share in a minute. But before we do, we've got about 10 minutes here. Tommy, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And we'll wrap up this time.
Awesome. Thanks, Randy. Randy, tell me more about when you talk about winning at home versus winning at work. When you're at the retreat, you did a lot of work on that. I think people in the club business, they spend a lot of time at work. And can you do both? Can you win at home and win at work? Talk a little bit about that. Yeah,
that's a great question. I think you can do both. I don't know why. I actually have a friend who's he's an NFL coach or on a coaching staff of an NFL team, and he actually is a former player, and he won a Super Bowl, and he with another organization. And he told me that he said I was looking when the confetti's coming down. He said on TV it looks like it's a big celebration and everything, but really there's just one corner of the end zone, and there's a few hundred fans left. and the confetti comes down and it looks great on TV. But he said, I'm looking over there at all these men who are on our team and these coaches we have. And I'm thinking about all the families that are represented, and all these families are just falling apart. He said, we just worked around the clock. And he said, I started thinking there's got to be a way that you can win without worshiping winning. I mean, is there a way that you can balance both? And so we're having this conversation. That's where I started to think, you got to be able to win in both places. It's not enough just to win here and lose here. And so I have a question or two I ask myself. I think this might be helpful to somebody. It's the question I ask at home is, do the people who know me the best actually love me the most? And if I start introspecting, that's a really great question, because I know so many people, the people who know them the best, actually, it looks impressive in public, but the people who know them the best actually respect them the least. They don't, you know, there's this it's almost like a lack of integrity. You know, it looks impressive on the surface, but it's like an iceberg. If you look underneath, there's not a lot going on down there, and there should be. That's where our stuff happens. And so I like that question. Do the people who know me the best love me the most? And there's a couple of ideas I would give you here. I would say if you're gonna, I'm working on a book right now called Winning Begins at Home, and the framework in there basically is to love first and to live last. I think that's how you live out what I'm talking about. And love first means, for me, I had 4 daughters. It's like, what's it like to be on the other side of the table as a young woman from a dad? I want to give them the home field advantage. Rather than I want to make my point, I want to be right. I'd rather get it right than be right. I want to make sure I'm giving them. I don't even need to have the last word. You know, I don't need to make my point. I mean, all those things. I don't know anybody that's ever like, I love it when people try to fix me, or I think there's something there. And then living last is just being a servant leader in your home. I think there's opportunity there for probably all of us to grow. I know I have to keep working on it all the time. Home is a really great place to practice all that we're talking about as well. So it's because you live with people, and it's going to be hard. And if you work with people, same thing. If you have club members, you're going to have an opportunity to practice your patience and your humility and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to all develop our character as we get in those environments.
Yeah. Randy, I remember at the retreat this past year, you said that to the group of men. Do the people that love you the most, or the people that know you the most, love you the best? And when I first heard that rocked my world. You know, to the people that know you the most, the people at work, the people at home, that people
know you the best, they love you the most. That's right.
And that's the ultimate litmus test. I mean, it's easy to be loved by people who know you very well, but the people that really know you, do they know you the most? I love that. How do we get a copy of Chasing Greatness?
Yeah, Chasing Greatness is the podcast. That book has not been written yet, so I'm in the work stages on that. But yeah, we will do something. But we've got 400 or 500 episodes out now of just a daily 7 minutes where we talk about this idea of reaching your potential. But we know that greatness is about. It really is about servant leadership. It's great for me to reach my potential, but when I'm helping the people around me get better as well, I think that's what really makes that leader impactful. That's where legacies are built, if you think about it. So, yeah, I would just encourage guys to listen to the Chasing Greatness podcast. They can just, anywhere they listen to podcasts, they can get that.
And you can get it on your website or Apple, or where do they get it?
It's on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you just put in Chasing Greatness and it'll come up. Chasing Greatness with Randy Gravitt. You can go to randygravitt.com, and yeah, the podcast links are, all that stuff's there. Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Randy, you talked about in your talk, what action do I need to take to create change? And all the leaders on the call are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. We're trying to be great at home. We're trying to be great at work.
Yeah.
Now we have some time off to reflect. You know, we have this June, July, August before it gets crazy again in September when all the members come back. What are the 2 or 3 steps they can do? What are some books that you can recommend over the summer to really start creating greatness within and creating change within?
Yeah. Mark Miller, my friend, wrote a book called Smart Leadership, which is really good. It actually kind of builds on this idea of if you feel like you're in quicksand, there's some choices that you can make to help you get out. I would recommend that if I was recommending a book. That's a good place to start from a self-leadership standpoint. But I would say this, as you go into the summer and start thinking about the fall, if you have even a little downtime over the next few weeks, like I'm going to have 4 days. I'm actually going to be down to Florida this next weekend, a long weekend. And it'd be easy just to unplug, and I will do that for most of that time. But I want to spend a little bit of that time reflecting on what's next. What's next in this next little season for me. I've got some stuff coming up, and I've got to spend some time thinking about where I want to go. If you have downtime, it'd be real easy to just make that all downtime, and that's great. You should get as much downtime as you can. But if you get, let's just say you get an hour or 2 hours or a half a day. I mean, you can devote a 2-day retreat to this, whatever. If you had an opportunity to pull back and to give some thought to how you want to lead differently in the next season, I think there's tremendous power in redirecting. I mean, that would be an example of redirecting. We introspect, and then what do we want to do differently? And a question I would encourage you all to ask is, what do you want to be true at the end of the year that's not true right now? What do you want to be true a year from today that's not true today? I mean, these questions will help you. And so you may, as you begin to answer that question, you're like, well, the team I have right now is not going to help me get there. If I'm, or maybe even my own behavior, if I'm, let's say Tommy's on my team and Tommy's, I've asked him to do something, but it's just easier for me to do it. And I'm just like, I'll just do it. And then I've got my hands in everything and I end up micromanaging. And now I've got no time to pull up and think about leadership because I'm just doing a lot of doing. I think there's danger there and nothing's ever going to change. And then Tommy's not going to get any better because I'm not giving him an opportunity and I'm not training him and teaching him. I think there needs to be maybe for some of you a fundamental shift in the way you think about what you do with your time. I'll give you one quick example. I was talking to a leader that we're coaching 2 days ago. We're on the phone and this guy has an HVAC plumbing business. And he told me he started in 2003, him and his wife, 2 of them. And today they have 42 people. And I'm like, how do you get from 2 people? Basically, he was doing the plumbing and his wife was taking the phone calls. I said, how do you get from there to here? And he said, it took us 6 years to hire somebody. Actually, it took us 6 years to start building a team. And then we hired 5 or 6 people. And he said the struggle was I still kept doing all the work. I mean, I was doing stuff. The people around me were working. We're just all doing. And he said, I couldn't get past it. And I said, well, how do you get from there to 42 people in a thriving company now? And he said there was a day where I went home after work and I took all the tools out of my truck and I put them in my garage. And I had a little bitty tool bag. And I literally packed that little bitty bag, all those tools. I get to choose 3 or 4 tools. I put them in that little tool bag and I put them in my car and I made myself a deal. If there's an emergency, you're allowed to pull the bag out of the trunk. But if there's not an emergency, you got to be a leader, not a doer. And he said, I spend all my time now training and teaching people who are doing. And he said, it's just made all the difference. I'm spending my time differently, but I had to have this moment where I shifted the way I did things. And I would just say for all of you, if you find yourself doing, what would it look like for you to shift all that? And there'd be some people around you that could help with the doing. You do the training and the teaching. You're an expert. I know it's easier for you to do it sometimes. Sometimes I think it's actually harder for me to do it all. If I start doing it all, I just end up exhausted and I'm carrying a bunch of stuff and then plates begin to fall. And if I'm juggling, the balls are, they're falling all over the place. So I would just say active rest. Like when you're resting, let's spend a little bit of that resting time thinking about how do I want to be different going into the future, and then rest. And maybe you'll have even more time to rest in the future if you've got people around you that are empowered and equipped to do what they can do. And then you can do what only you can do.
Great. Thanks, Randy. One of the club leaders, Vanette, asked a question on the chat room. She said, what is the difference between a good leader and a good manager?
I think a manager is more in the day-to-day operational side of things. I think a leader is, I'm simplifying this, but a leader does spend more time pulled up thinking, where are we trying to go? A leader's not disengaged. Great leaders are engaged leaders. They're leaned in, but they're doing what leaders do. They're thinking about vision. They're thinking about developing people. They're thinking about strategy. They're thinking about systems that need to be in place, structure, all that. Managers are, in my mind, they're making sure that we're carrying out the day to day.
Yeah. Thanks, Randy. And last thing, you coach all these great leaders around the world. What's one thing that you kind of see, no matter what industry, one thing that great leaders are doing well, and maybe one thing where a lot of your people that you coach, great leaders, are failing or having some shortcomings?
Yeah, I think the best leaders I know are they're really locked in on what they're trying to do. They are, and I'll give you one quick example. So I've got a business owner that I've known for a while, and she's got a really great, amazing. She's a Chick-fil-A operator actually, and she's got a great business, $10 million a year business. Incredible what she's doing. And we're talking to her and like, what are you really trying to do? And obviously you got to make a profit. You're not going to be a business if you're not making a profit. But she said, I'm trying to create a fun place to work. I mean, that's kind of the way she thinks about it. Every morning she's got a way to think about what she's trying to do. Chick-fil-A actually has said they're not trying to sell chicken. I mean, they're selling $20 billion worth of chicken this year, but they're like, they've stated our vision is to be the most caring company in the world. That's what they want to do. And so Kayla, this businesswoman, she said, I want to create a fun place to work. And we're like, how do you know how do you measure fun? And I thought this was great. She said, I listen for laughter. If I don't hear any laughter, I can just make an assumption that nobody's having any fun. And yes, I'm trying to make a profit. Yes, there's a P&L. Yes, we're trying to keep customers happy. But I want the people that are caring for the people to feel cared for. I want them to feel like this is a fun place to come. And this is one leader, one example where she knows I wake up every day. I try to go create a fun place for people to come and be a part of. That may not be what you're doing, but if you don't know what you're aspiring to, if you don't pull up and think like, what am I trying to do? And be locked in. And those leaders that are the most successful, it is, I use my iceberg again. There's an 80% below the waterline, 20 above. Yes, your skills are important. Can you lead meetings and build teams and solve problems and keep people happy, customer service? That's all skill stuff. Very important. But what makes you a leader that others want to follow is the servant leader. It's the heart stuff that you talk about, Tommy. This is, if you think about the best leader you've ever known, I'm guessing if I ask you, why were they your favorite leader you've ever known your whole life? Maybe it's your band director when you're in 10th grade, or your history teacher at community college, or your Uncle Joe who had a, auto repair, or maybe it's the owner of a business, or the leader of your club. I mean, you think of best leader you've ever known. I'm guessing it's not they were able to lead meetings and build teams and solve problems, and they were probably all able to do all those. But what made it to your list was their heart. It really was your heart. And Mark Miller and I always say, if your heart's not right, nobody cares about your skills. It does start with the heart. So yeah, I would kind of leave it there.
Thank you, Randy. Another nugget. How do you know if you're building a culture of fun? I listen for laughter. That's great.
Yeah. Is that not great? Okay. So I want to close with, can I take the 60 seconds here and close?
Yeah.
I actually looked up traction, and it means a pulling force. And I thought, like, what? I mean, yeah, my buddy's got the chain and all that kind of stuff. But actually, this was my own story, and I want to share this, and this may or may not be helpful to you. But I ran across an old Psalm. It's a Bible verse. And when I was in the midst of my chaos, like, am I going to change careers, and am I going to move into this? And I got to get back to a place of traction. I'm spinning my wheels, and it's starting to get messy for everybody around me. I found this old verse, and I love this. And it said this. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he turned to me and heard my cry. And you may or may not want to cry out to God, whatever. I'm not, but here's what I can say that happened to me. He lifted me out of the slimy pit. I mean, I love this verse. Out of the mud and the mire. I mean, it's just times I just felt like this is overwhelming. I cannot just go through the motions for the next 20 years. My dad, this mundane middle is real. And I love the fact that he set me on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. And so I guess I'll say to you, whether you're a person of faith or not, if you will take this formula and you will introspect and you'll redirect and you'll just take action day by day by day, you just keep taking these baby steps. I think you can get back to a place where you're back on firm ground, and then you're able to have maximum influence. So I'm cheering for you. I'm excited for you. There's nothing would make me happier than to know that a bunch of bunch of leaders like yourself are living an unstuck life, the people around you will really benefit. And I know we all will. So thanks for all you do. Thanks for letting me hang out with you. I'm really grateful. It's been awesome.
Randy Gravitt, thank you so much for spending time with us. I really appreciate your wisdom. Florida Club leaders, thank you, the best sergeant and the board for continuing doing this summit. And our next webinar is September 6th with my good friend, Andre Van Hall, who's going to speak about curiosity of change. Andre is an incredible leader, a genuine guy, went blind, got cancer, did all the things that just challenges and just had an incredible, inspiring story. So we'll see you back on September 6th and have a great summer.